U.S. President Trump told the UN General Assembly last month that he was responsible for ending 7 unendable wars. He is hoping to make it 8 with his peace plan for Gaza.
As you know, last night we reached a momentous breakthrough in the Middle East, something that people said was never going to be done. We ended the war in Gaza and really, on a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the...
And our coverage continues now with Ian Bremmer. He's an author, a political scientist, and founder and president of the Eurasia Group in New York City. Ian, it's good to see you again. You deal in risk analysis. What are the chances that this ceasefire does not hold? I mean, what are the chances that this optimism of the moment may be dashed?
Look, I'm like you are. I'm more optimistic than I have been at any point in 2 years. The United States is putting real leverage on the Israeli prime minister to uphold his side of this deal with real consequences for the first time since the war started, first time since October 7th. And Hamas leaders appear to believe that the deal that they're being offered is their best shot, that they should put some trust in it. But you know, there's enormous opacity around that. It's impossible to put yourself in the head of Hamas leadership. I'll feel a lot better when 48 hostages that have been held for 2 years are released. If that happens, I feel that the next phase of the deal is very likely to go forward smoothly. But until that happens, and there are still questions as to exactly what they are being exchanged for example, and also there are questions about who's responsible for the direct release and whether the people that are negotiating have the ability to implement on that. All of those things sound good in principle, but until those hostages are safe, there's no way to make that claim.
And the Achilles heel of this agreement right now, this evening, on this Thursday evening, would you agree it is the right-wing segment of Netanyahu's government and cabinet?
I don't think that's the greatest uncertainty. I think the greatest uncertainty is what Hamas does. Because, I mean, there's no real way to pressure them. They're sort of dead enders at this point. And the Israeli government tried to assassinate the political leadership recently. So it's not as if they have a lot to live for. When it comes to the far right in Israel, they have been told by the United States and told by Netanyahu, this is the best deal you're possibly going to get. So do they want to go with it? Do they want to blow it up? It's an open question, but I actually think it's more likely, significantly more likely than not, that the Israeli cabinet goes ahead and approves this deal at this point. So I wouldn't call that the Achilles heel. I think that Hamas leadership is the Achilles heel.
You know, we have spoken many times in the past 2 years about the leverage that Hamas has, and it's always been the hostages, and they've agreed to return all of the hostages. So Hamas has agreed to basically get rid of its biggest weapon that it
give
has.
Up their leverage.
Yeah, I mean, does that shock you? I mean, there had to be incredible pressure on them to get them to do that.
That's right. Well, that's why I'm saying this is the Achilles heel, because if Hamas gives up the hostages, at that point, it's not like they have the military capability to rain down more destruction on Israel anytime soon. They don't. So there's no real deterrent capacity. They're going to have to disarm. They're not going to be a part of governance on the ground in Gaza. I mean, you know, at best, they're getting a signed peace agreement that allows them to escape with their and their families' lives. That's it. And of course, that's not fully true because a lot of them and their families have already been killed. So, yeah, it's quite something that we're expecting to see, that all of these hostages, the only remaining leverage that Hamas has, are actually going to be allowed free. I'm sure, look, I mean, the families have been holding out hope. And when President Trump spoke at the United Nations a couple weeks ago and he said the way to end this war is to let the hostages go, that was his only applause line inside the General Assembly. And he got applause from countries all over the world for that. It wasn't just American allies. So that would really be a breakthrough. And Trump would deserve a lot of credit if he's able to secure that.
Well, I mean, this is Trump's plan. I mean, he owns it now, but he does have a history of not devoting attention to the details. His attention span is known for being rather short. What happens to this plan once he refocuses on something else? Are you worried about the devil in the details and the reality raising up and torpedoing the whole thing?
He has remained focused on both Russia, Ukraine, and on Israel, Gaza, certainly over the last months of his presidency. It's not like Armenia, Azerbaijan, where he says he ended the war. They weren't actually fighting at the time, and then he misspeaks about what countries it was he negotiated with. He doesn't really care at all about that. That's just a check mark. This he cares about, and he has empowered two of his most trusted advisors, Steve Witkoff and Marco Rubio, to run point on this. His son-in-law, who wants nothing to do with politics, he really wanted to be out, has been brought back in part because there was a threat to his own signature Abraham Accords if this whole thing fell apart. And then you have the Gulf states that have been critical to this deal. They're the ones that formulated it together with Trump at the summit that they held in New York a couple weeks ago. And many of those leaders are leaders that Trump speaks the most frequently to, the most warmly with, particularly Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. They're also investing an awful lot in the United States. So while I agree with you completely that Trump's interest in the policy formulation of exactly how this deal is coming together is low, his interest and his continued interest in ensuring that the deal actually holds, I think, is much higher than it would be on other issues.
Well, I want to read out a tweet that you posted earlier, and I'm quoting here: if Trump gets a Gaza deal, the hostages released, the fighting over, Israeli troops withdraw, he deserves everyone's credit. He'll certainly have mine. That sounds like an endorsement for the Nobel Peace Prize, which we all know that he would like to have. You raised some eyebrows with that. Is it a little premature?
I didn't say anything about a Nobel. I said he deserves my credit. I'm not on the Nobel committee.
I know, but that's how it's been understood.
You know, I think that you've got a lot of great people that have done a lot for peace, but I certainly think he would deserve credit that Biden wouldn't, for example, that the Europeans wouldn't, for example, that the Gulf states wouldn't, for example. This would be a big deal. It would certainly put him in the running. Absolutely. I would also remind everyone that the Norwegian government has nothing to do with the decision of who gets a Nobel Peace Prize. So if it turns out that he doesn't get it, then we should be criticizing the committee the way that I was critical of the committee when they decided to give it to Obama when he hadn't accomplished anything.
I remember that.
I mean, yeah, the committee, I have no idea what's going to determine, their decision. The fact that Trump is so desperate to have a peace prize probably rubs some of the members of the committee the wrong way. I don't particularly care. Look, he's my president. I would like him to succeed. I don't like it when he fails, but it's not up to me. Right? His success and failure is determined by how well he governs. And on some things, it's been very poorly. And on this one, we should give him credit. I'm delighted to be able to give him credit. Frankly, I wish I could do it more often.
Yeah. Well, one more question for you. I've heard a lot in the last 24, 48 hours, commentators saying they wish that President Trump would devote as much energy into the Ukraine-Russia situation as he has the Palestinian-Israeli situation. How do you see that?
There are very few presidents in history that I can remember describing anything they've done as a failure. And Trump, who it never says that he's wrong about anything, has said that he's failed in getting Putin to the table. He's brought it up. He usually forgets about things when it doesn't work out. It's a political superpower he has. It's as if it never happened. It didn't exist. He keeps bringing up Russia, Ukraine. He's angry about it. And that has led to a greater willingness to pressure American allies to cut off their purchasing of oil from Russia, including friends of Trump like Viktor Orban, like Recep Erdogan of Turkey. And it also has led to more constructive conversations with Trump, with Zelensky, in terms of providing more extended range cruise missiles that would perhaps be able to put more pressure on Russia and their capacity to produce oil, which is, of course, what allows them to fund the war. So I don't think that Trump has lost interest in Russia, Ukraine at all. I think he's angry, he's frustrated, he feels like he's failed, and he wants to do something about it. This one is kind of a bone stuck in his throat, frankly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will agree with you. There are a lot of people around the world who find themselves this evening hoping that President Trump succeeds with this ceasefire plan. We will be watching to see what happens. Ian Bremmer.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's right. Good talking with you. We appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you.
You too, my friend.
All right, let's go now to journalist Karim El-Gawhary. He is in Cairo. He's been following these talks for us. Karim, the Egyptian president, we understand, has invited U.S. President Trump to Egypt for a signing ceremony next week. I mean, there are still so many details to hammer out here. This is a tentative moment. Does this feel almost premature?
Well, first, I'm a bit envious when I see my colleague Tanya standing on Hostage Square. I would love to be able to stand now in Gaza, but we're still forbidden as journalists to get into the Gaza Strip. So that's why we cannot report from inside. When it comes to Egypt, of course, now there was a meeting between the Egyptian President Sisi and Steve Witkoff, the U.S. mediator, where Egypt again said that they emphasized that they want to have this ceasefire really starting immediately and not any more delays or even a delay until the signing ceremony. But they also confirming that they want to work closely with the U.S. Not only for this first phase, but also to reach a broader solution to the Middle East. When it comes to the signing ceremony itself, that is going to take place in Egypt, and where, again, with Sisi, with Witkoff, again invited Trump to be present there. That's going to be only the signing of phase one of this ceasefire agreement. And that's the phase we were talking about the exchange of prisoners, about the Israeli partial withdrawal, about humanitarian aid coming in. So that's the part they're going to sign in Egypt.
And what more do we know, Karim, about the list of Palestinian prisoners who would be freed?
Well, that was a big issue, obviously, going on even after the agreement was announced. Now, don't forget, there is about more than 10,000, according to Israeli human rights organizations, there's more than 10,000 Palestinians imprisoned in Israeli prisons. A third of them in administrative detention, means without due process. But what the haggling is about the political heavyweights that Hamas is trying to get out this way. One name that is mentioned again and again, and the demand of Hamas was to get freed Marwan al-Barghouti, who is there sentenced to several times lifetime. But he is a political heavyweight. He's not a Hamas member. He's a member of the competing organization of Fatah. But he is seen as somebody who can unify the Palestinian ranks and maybe also take part in the future negotiations about the future of Gaza. But it looks like that the Israelis are not ready to free him.
There is understandably this very cautious hope in Gaza tonight. What are your sources telling you about how people there, how they feel about this plan and about its implementation?
Well, I think they are really in the mode of survival, and they're hoping also that one of the issues is how do we survive until the ceasefire is really in effect. And one of the big issues they're talking about is that we want to go home. Lots of people left their houses of Gaza City trying to go home, and everyone is asking, what's the time frame? What's the timetable? When can we go home? That's for them one of the most important items. So the question is when the Israeli army is withdrawing so they can return back to their houses or to whatever is left of it.
Journalist Karim El-Gawhary with the latest from Cairo tonight. Karim, as always, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm joined now by Robert Chatterjee. He's the deputy editor-in-chief of Zenith magazine here in Berlin. He specializes in Middle East politics. It's good to see you again. Robert, the first phase of this ceasefire and hostage and prisoner release is expected to be approved by Israel's government. We're expecting sometime this evening. Is this indeed the beginning of the end of the Gaza war?
Well, we have a frame of reference from beginning of the year where we have a quite similar deal that was also multi-phased. And this deal fell apart at the end of one of those phases, especially because of Israeli internal politics. So that would be the real first test to see if anything is different from last time. I am a bit more pessimistic when it comes to the Israeli cabinet, because one of the ministers, Bezalel Smotrich, right-wing extremist minister, has already announced that he will not vote for this deal. Last time around, there was a kind of a deal within the Israeli cabinet that basically gave Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, the right-wing ministers, more leeway in the West Bank in exchange for kind of tacitly approving a Gaza deal, albeit temporarily. So we have a frame of reference for how the last time around things went, and this should also be used as a frame of reference to see how serious the Israeli government is with implementing the deal this time around.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how it's going to look on the ground if the points of this plan are actually carried out. The Israel Defense Forces, they would complete the first phase of its partial withdrawal to a predetermined yellow line that was shared by U.S. President Trump a few days ago. We want to pull up a map so that our viewers can see that. Today, an Israeli spokesperson said the military would still control 53% of the Gaza Strip. So you see that yellow line there. So basically more than half of the Gaza Strip will still be in Israeli hands. Do you think this is the beginning of the complete withdrawal, or could that end up being the final border of the Gaza Strip?
Well, it's kind of the line of control, if you would frame it like that. And it's also the most contentious point. It was in the negotiations. I was in contact with people who were engaged in the negotiations, and this was by far the most contentious point because as it is formulated right now in the agreement, this line not only gives Israel control of like half of the Gaza Strip, but also full control of whether to attack or renege on the deal that has been approved. And even within the negotiating teams, there was quite a lot of pessimism if that isn't like this gray area basically allows the IDF to still control the terms on the ground. So I think the most underappreciated and most important point in this 20-point plan is the international security forces, because having another armed force on the ground just changes the momentum and basically takes away Israel's ability to unilaterally renege on any deal that has been negotiated. So this yellow line.
Well, Robert, there is a leap of faith here, though, isn't there, with that if you do have this international force, that they will buffer, there will be a true buffer, and that the influence of the IDF and Israel will not filter through. I mean, that requires some faith in the future, doesn't it?
Well, it definitely needs pressure, and we saw everything that was achieved here was only possible because of the immense pressure put on the Israeli government, and because of the loss of faith in the Israeli government by a lot of international partners. So that is what achieved this year, not the goodwill of the Israeli government. Let's be clear here. And in the same vein, it's not only about securing Israel from threat from Gaza, but the much more immediate concern is shielding the Palestinian population from Israeli attacks that have been occurring for 2 years. So this is a point about the Palestinian population and shielding them from attacks. And
Okay.
this is so this international security force is changing the equation on the ground, and that will be the most important test of faith of if Israel is willing to do that, and if they're willing to collapse the government if necessary. So again, last time we saw what happened, that the internal Israeli politics took precedence over, yeah.
Yeah, but we're definitely going to be watching to see what happens in the next few hours. And I know a lot of people hoping that that does not happen again. Robert Chatterjee, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of Zenith magazine. Robert, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.